Hello guys, this is Raul Ochoa with the second part of what is ROS2, when to use it, and why. This will be the actual installation and setup guide where we'll go through the process of actually installing ROS2 version Jazzy Jalisco on your Ubuntu 24.04 system. Now we're going to install ROS2 and with that a couple of additional tools that are going to be used throughout your robotics journey. One of them is called Rviz, which comes prepackaged with ROS2. This tool is used to visualize your robotic platform on the computer. You can add sensors and see it take shape on there. That way you can then add that to a third tool we're going to be using called Gazebo, which is a physics engine or a physics 3D simulator where you'll be able to get that model that you built in Rviz and test it out in a virtual environment that would act very close to what it would, the way it would behave on the real world. So this is very useful because it allows you to test it on the computer without having to commit to physically building it on the real world and realizing that maybe you needed to make changes or you bought the wrong thing. So you get to test everything on the computer first, and then once you're ready, then you can actually commit to build it on the real world with the real thing. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I am currently in my Ubuntu system. We're going to open up the web browser and we're going to go to uh, ROS.org. That is the official website for ROS, the operating system. And we're going to go to getting started. And once we go in this page, we're going to scroll down and you're going to see that there's different versions of ROS that are available for us to download. Now, it's always important to look at the versions that are recommended. And if you kind of look closely here, there's a few versions that say LTS and some might not say LTS. Um, they might say short-term release. We want to get something that's long-term. That way, we're going to see that there's a longer community involvement. You're going to find more resources, and it's not going to be something that's going to phase out very recently. That's going to force you to upgrade for some reason. So, in our use case, we're going to focus on Jazzy Jalisco. It is a recommended version for the Ubuntu version that we have, which is 24.04. So we'll go ahead and click on that icon there, which is going to take us to that installation page. I'm going to go through some of these commands briefly, kind of explain what we're doing, but I'm not going to cover everything that you're going to see on this page. Just you're going to have to trust my experience, and I'll teach you what's necessary just to get the tool installed. And if you like afterwards, you can do a little more research and kind of go through all of these resources that ROS provides through their website. So since we're working with Ubuntu, we're using version 24.04, we're going to click on this link that says dev packages, which is the recommended version. We're going to click on that, and it's going to take us to the page that's going to provide us a lot of instructions. All right, so these commands that you see on this rectangular sections here are commands that we're going to enter into the terminal or shell of the operating system. You guys might have used this in the past. If you haven't, don't worry about it. Just kind of follow the instructions, okay? So in order to find that, you would go to this Show Apps menu on your screen, and then you're going to have a lot of options on here. So here's where you can kind of scroll and find the terminal. You might have to type it in here, terminal, and it'll appear like this. Now, you can click it from here and it will open. What I did, because I like to have it accessible to me here on the left side, is once you open it for the first time, you can actually right click on the icon here on the left and then tell it to pin to the dash. So if you click on that, it will automatically always appear on there. So if you were to have to open it again, you'll have it accessible right here. All right, so once we open up the terminal, this is where we're going to enter all these commands. I'm going to go ahead and place one screen on the left and the other one on the right for simplicity purposes. That way we can just kind of copy and paste things over. All right, so the first command here is it says locale. Right, so basically what that is going to check for your system to see if it can understand a specific type of encoding, right? Computers can exist all over the world, and some people might be used to typing on them with a different alphabet. So ROS requires the English version or the UTF-8, UTF-8 encoding. So we're going to make sure that our system has it to make sure that ROS can install properly. All right, so if you guys actually copy this over, you can just copy this, come over to the terminal and paste it. When you press enter, you're going to see the current settings. So most of them seem like they're okay, but just to make sure, we're going to follow through with these steps. All right. So the next line of code, we're going to copy. It's this one right here, and we're going to paste it. Okay. What this line of code does, it's going to actually try to execute this command as administrator. So the main user of the account with administrator rights, that's what the word sudo does on here. So it's going to ask you for the password. And once you enter this the first time, most likely the next commands that you give it the sudo instruction, it's not going to require your password. But for the first time, we're going to enter the password we set up for our system and press enter. Once you do that, it's going to do the rest of the command. And this command that we copied and pasted is basically is going to update the Ubuntu's package menu, basically a list of all the menu or packages available to download for it. And then it's going to make sure that the locales package is installed on the system, just in case it's not. All right. Now, the next command, it's this one right here. We're going to copy it and we're going to paste here as well. And then press enter. What this command actually does is that it's going to generate the locale data files for the English alphabet that we need this computer to be able to understand, the UTF-8 version. So that's what that does on there. And we're going to go to the next one. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste it. All right. And what that actually does is it's actually going to update the system-wide locale settings to make sure that now that we know that the file's on there and that it understands this, we're going to tell it, make sure you always use this one system-wide. All right, and this other next command, the export, is actually going to make sure that the locale is actually set for the current terminal. So the way Linux kind of works is any commands that you kind of update on the system in general, unless you close the terminal and reopen it, some of those settings might not take place. So often you have to run commands like these to force it to update the current terminal that you're on. Now, you're probably not going to do this often. You might not even do it again while you're working on the installation of ROS, but it's just for you guys to understand what this command is doing. So we'll go ahead and enter that. And with that, we don't have to close the terminal and reopen it. We're okay to keep on working from here. Now we're going to enter the locale code again, this command, to see if any settings have changed. So when we do this, most of them are probably going to be the same since this is a US computer, but this just ensures that in case for some reason your version of Ubuntu did not default to the US UTF-8 encoding, that now it does. All right, so that's a very quick but brief explanation of what these initial commands do, but they're very necessary to make sure that the rest of the installation works. All right, so now we'll move over to the next section. This section is actually going to allow us to install the repository. So basically, this is going to tell our Ubuntu system, like, hey, there's these repositories or directories out there in the internet that have ROS, which we're going to later install. So we're going to copy and paste this here. I'm just going to tell it to install it later. So you might get this prompt that says that you want to continue. It gives you the option of Y or N. We're going to type in the Y and press enter. This is just confirming that we do want to install this software properties commons package. It just gives us the ability to install a few extra things. We'll continue to the next one. We'll paste this on here. It's going to ask us to confirm that we want to continue by pressing enter, so we'll do that. And this is going to include many useful packages, some that are dependencies of ROS2, which means it requires them to be able to operate, to run. All right, so now we'll continue. We'll copy and paste this on here. This line does a few things on here. So this line is going to refresh the package list, sort of like we did at the beginning. Then it's going to install curl, which is a tool that allows us to download files from the internet. which is how we're going to download ROS2. So that line is very important. We need to make sure that that gets done on there. All right, so this next line, make sure you copy everything because sometimes you have to kind of drag to the right like this. So this one's kind of long, but we'll make sure that we're copying the entire line. We'll right click and copy it and paste it. So what this line is going to do is this line is going to kind of automate the fetching process for the latest version of ROS. So there's different versions. It's going to make sure that it pulls the most recent ones. So when we download the file, which is on the next line, the next command, that it gets the right one, right? So that's what this curl command does. It's a tool that we installed right before the last couple of commands. So we'll make sure we copy this. We'll go back to make sure that we got everything. We'll copy it, we'll paste it. This command is actually going to download the installer for ROS2. As you can see, downloaded a file. And this last line is the one that actually unpackages and installs the ROS2 program. So this is going to install it. When we press enter, so you can see it's setting up, unpacking and setting it up. All right, so we'll continue. We're going to install some additional, we're going to update the system again, and then we're going to install some additional useful tools for ROS. These are the ROS dev tools. These are tools that you're going to use while you operate within ROS to build different packages and the nodes that we spoke about in the other video. So we'll install this as well. All right, we'll acknowledge that we do want it to continue with a Y, press enter, and it'll continue downloading things here. Now, depending on your internet connection, this could take a little bit. So let's just wait for the process to complete here. All right, and then now we're getting to the good part where we actually get the tool installed. We downloaded it, unpackaged it. Now we have some of the tools that we need to build and install this. So we're going to update the system again since we downloaded a few things and made a few changes. This process is done quite often as well as the upgrade. So if you see it multiple times, it's just because we're doing changes as we're installing things. So it's always good to update uh, your system because things that you install might eventually require more dependencies, and this allows it to figure that out on its own. So we'll enter that again. You're going to see that sometimes this process is very short because just about everything is updated. That's why this time it was a lot faster. All right, and now we're going to do the upgrade. You can actually click this little copy icon and it'll speed up the copy. We'll press enter. We'll acknowledge with yes, with a Y. So you can see it's downloading a lot of things. All right, now the next step, as you can see, it tells you here what it's doing. It's going to do the desktop install version of ROS, which comes with Rviz, some demos, and some tutorials that you might look at later. Okay, so one important thing is to make sure that within the package or the version of ROS that you're downloading, that it does say Jazzy. If it does say Jazzy, then that means that you probably clicked on a different page and you're following slightly different instructions. Most commands for all versions of ROS are very similar. The only thing that is going to change is the version that you're installing. So make sure that it does say Jazzy on there, which is a version that we're going to be installing. So we'll copy that and we'll paste it here. It's going to ask us to confirm. We'll put a Y, and it's going to start downloading everything or installing everything, sorry, from the Jazzy package. So it's getting that for us, and then we're going to be able to install it. Now, while that's getting done, if you look here on the right side, there's another version that says base. So this base version has almost no tools as part of it, right? So this might be something that you'll install later on when you're more advanced within the ROS operating system. Typically, I recommend downloading the desktop version on the system that you're going to be developing on. So if this is a system like your laptop or your desktop, where you're going to be creating your robots, practicing, coding different nodes and things like that, then the desktop version is definitely what you want to install. But once you build, let's say, a robot that's going to have its own onboard computer, like a Raspberry Pi, and you need to install ROS on there, it's not necessary to have simulators or any additional software on there that might make it slow down. So for those instances, installing the base version, which is just bare minimum what you need as far as ROS is concerned, this is probably the best option to do at that point. So those are the two differences. You don't have to run this one anymore because we're installing this version of, of ROS, the one that has all the additional tools, tutorials, and a few demos that ROS provides so you can test that the software installation actually work properly. And we'll run one of those demos, a couple of those demos at the end of the installation, just to make sure that everything is working properly. All right, so we're about 40% through the unpacking and installation of ROS. This could take a bit, right? It all depends on what type of system you have, its specs, and a lot of the times your internet connection in case it needs to download additional packages. So while that's completing, I'll kind of scroll down through the instructions here. And our next step is actually going to be to set up the environment. So once this completes, ROS is pretty much installed. Now we're going to make sure that our environment or our system understands that ROS is installed, that it can use it. And then we're going to try it out with some examples that are provided to us, some of these demos that I mentioned. All right, perfect. So now that he completed, we're going to use this command. It's a source command. This is something that you're probably going to be using pretty often when operating within ROS. Your computer doesn't often understand that certain things are installed and that they are available to it for use. So you often have to source some of these computer programs. In this case, we have to source and tell the system that ROS version Jazzy is installed, and we have to tell it in which location it's actually at. So if we copy this and we paste it here, it's actually going to operate. Now, how do we test this? Well, if we were to run this ROS2 command down here, which what this ROS2 command does is actually run a ROS package with a node on there, you're going to see that it's not going to allow us. So we run this, it's going to say ROS2, the command was not found. Well, that's because it doesn't understand that ROS is there and where to find it. So that's why we need to do this source. So we're going to copy it and we're going to source it. As you can see, it's the same command that's here in the instructions. So once we source this, now the system knows that, hey, we have ROS2 installed and we can actually use it. So now if we actually run this command, which is a talker command, it's actually going to start ROS and it's actually going to be functioning. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is a very basic test demo package that ROS provides for us just to test that the ROS installation is working successful. Now, what it's doing is just publishing a hello world message within the ROS communication, and that's all it does. So now the second part of that, it's a listener, which is going to actually subscribe and pull that data from this package. So we'll go ahead and hold Control C on the screen to pause or to shut down this ROS2 command. And what we're going to have to do is open up a second terminal. So we're going to right click on this little icon and click on New Window, which is going to give us another terminal. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys that if we copy this command here, the listener, the second version, right? It's not going to work here. If we paste it, it's going to give us the same message saying that ROS2 was not found. And the reason for that, if you recall, is because we did not source it. So we're going to source this. It's the exact same command that's up here. We just have to tell it that ROS exists because it's a different terminal. And now we can actually run any ROS command that we want on here. So I'm going to type in clear so we can kind of clean this up a little bit. And then we're going to run that talker package from ROS up here. We're going to paste it and we're going to execute. So what that's going to be doing is going to be publishing that message again within the ROS communication. And to test that everything is working properly, we're going to run the listener package on the second terminal. And I want you to see what it does. When you run the listener, it's capturing the data that's being sent over by the talker and it's displaying it on the screen as it receives it on the listener side. If you can see that each of those messages has an ID and it's displaying it right here. So ID 22 and so on. If you look at this one, they're also numbered. So whatever is published up here, it publishes here. And if we stop the talker with Control C, the listener stops listening because there's no information being transmitted, so it can't pull anything. But if we restart the talker, then it starts capturing whatever is publishing, as you can see there. Perfect. So at this point, we have ROS2 installed. Now I'm going to show you guys one more thing. If we close these terminals and reopen up a new terminal, whenever we try to run a ROS2 command, once again, it's not going to want to actually execute it. That's because it's not sourced. Now, having to source ROS2 every single time is very time consuming and very tedious. So there's a way to tell the system to automatically always include it. So that's what I'm going to teach you guys how to do right now because that's very useful and it's going to speed up your development process tremendously, okay? Now, before we can do that, we need to have some sort of text editor. I prefer to use gedit. It's something that's widely used in Linux. It's simple to use. This is not meant to write code, mainly just to update simple text files. So I'm going to teach you guys how to install that. Now, the way you do that is by using the apt get command. So we're going to do this. We're going to do a sudo so we can run this. Well, first let me clear the screen. We're going to use sudo because we want to run this command as administrator so we can install it on the system. And we're going to put apt install, gedit. So what this is going to do is going to allow us to install this text editor. We're going to type in our administrator password. It's going to ask us to confirm. We'll put yes. And then it's going to download that application for us. All right, now that it's on there, you can open up this text editor by typing in gedit. And real simple, we can actually create files and save them and everything. So we'll close this. We will close without saving. And now we're going to actually edit a system file that tells every terminal what to consider available to the system when a new terminal window starts. And this is where we're going to allow it to source this ROS application every single time it starts. Okay, so we're going to clear the screen real quick so it doesn't look so messy. And the file that we're going to open, it's called -rc. All right, so this is located in the root directory of the system. And in order for us to access that without knowing the actual directory is by using this command. We tell it use the gedit application and open up the file under the root directory called -rc. When we enter that, it opens up the system file. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And then on here, we're actually going to add that source line that we've been having to enter every single time on the terminal. So no matter what you see on the very bottom of the screen, just enter a new line, paste it, and save. Now, if you don't have the save button available to you, that is because you did not open this with sudo privileges. So if you don't see this, then most likely you have to re-enter this command, but you have to enter the word sudo at the beginning. Something like this. And if initially the system was not allowing you to enter and save that line, now it will. So just in case you encounter that issue, try it that way. All right, so now that we have that line on there, we can test to see if it worked by closing the terminal, opening up a blank new terminal, and just running one of these ROS commands. So now we don't have to source um, ROS just because a new terminal window was open. It automatically gets sourced, so you don't have to worry about entering that line. We can easily open up a new window, enter the listener, paste it, and we no longer have to source it. So it's a very useful way to automatically source things. All right, so I'll close that, close this, I'll clear it. All right, so real quick, now what we're going to do is we're going to test Rviz, which is that visualization tool for your robotic platforms, by running just a simple command. This should already be installed, so we're just going to make sure that it's installed. We're going to run Rviz through ROS. So we're going to type in ROS2, run Rviz2, Rviz2. So you don't have to really understand what you're doing there. You will learn how to use Rviz later on, but this is just a command that you can type and execute just to make sure that Rviz is going to open up. So as you can see, the application executed properly. You will learn how to use this later on. But like I mentioned, this allows you to build your robot platforms in 3D, add sensors and other things. That way then you can use that model and add it into a physics engine that would allow you to simulate in the real world, but in a virtual environment. So we'll close this out now, close without saving it. So we have Rviz going, which is a good thing. Now we're going to install the last part that we need to make sure you have everything set up properly, and that is Gazebo. Gazebo is that the physics engine, the physics 3D simulator that you're going to use a lot in your robotics journey. It is very important. We try to simulate as much as we can before we build the real thing because it saves money, time, and just gives you a lot of flexibility. So it's a very important concept of robotics, right? Being able to simulate things. So the way we're going to install that, and I'm going to show you guys where to find the information, is by opening up a new tab. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to put um, ROS Gazebo install. Usually the first link should probably be the good one, but you're going to see it. This is the Gazebo logo. So we're going to look for the official gazebosim.org website. We're going to click on that. And then there's going to be tons of information on here. But just to send you to the right place, in case you don't end up on this page, which is actually the one we were looking for, on the left side, look for the one that says ROS/Gazebo installation. This link has been there for since I can remember it, for years, and it always gives you a good idea of what version of Gazebo is recommended for your current setup. So if you look at here, it says at the time of the time they wrote this instructions, they're recommended to use Ubuntu 24.04, which is what you guys have, with the version ROS2 Jazzy Jalisco, which is what we installed, and Gazebo Harmonic, which is what we're going to install. But it's a lot simpler than installing ROS. This is just going to take one command to install and one command to test. So we'll scroll down just a bit and we're going to do this single step. It says installing the default Gazebo that pairs with your ROS version. Basically, that's what that means. And it's this single command. So we're going to copy and paste it. And the only one thing we're going to change is this section on here. So this is a system variable. You should be able to pull it automatically from the system. So you should be able to copy and paste it and run it. But what I like to do is just replace that with the actual distribution or version of ROS that we have, which in this case is Jazzy. So I'm going to copy this, kind of follow the way I do it. We're going to paste it. And instead of pressing enter, I'm going to remove this right here. Okay. And I'm going to type in Jazzy, just like that, because that's the version of ROS that we have. Now, when we run and press enter, it's going to ask us for the password, so we're running this as administrator. It's going to ask us to confirm, so I'll put Y for yes, and it's going to install the right version of Gazebo that pairs correctly with the version of ROS2 that we installed in our system. So this might take just a bit. It shouldn't take as long as the way, as long as ROS2 took, but it might take just a bit since it is downloading a full physics engine for us to use. Now, Gazebo, something for you guys to know while this installs, is not the only simulation physics engine out there. It's just one of the ones that are widely used out there, and it's open source, so it's free for you to use. But there are several other ones out there. One very famous that's making a lot of noise right now, it's by NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is very well known in the robotics industry because they make all the GPUs that normally get used to train and power some of these robotic platforms. But you guys can use Gazebo and you'll be able to do pretty much anything that you want on there. All right, so now that it's installed, we're just going to test that it's working. And we're going to do that very easily by typing gz space GUI for GUI. So this launches Gazebo and it launches a graphical user interface. When we press enter, oh, it did not find GC. So let's see what happened on here. Which version did we put? I think we might have to type in ROS GC. This is why it's important to look at the documentation just to make sure. So it might have changed the version of, or it might have changed the way the command gets typed in when you run it. So let's look here real quick. This is installation. Where is it at? Let's look real quick here. Okay, let's look through the left side under tutorials. We might find a basic command to be able to run it. We shouldn't need the rich. Let's try to use the simulation, which is what we're trying to do. The basic command. Let's look through one really quick here. That's the installation. This is just installing a different way, so we're not trying to make any tests. Terminology. GC sim. I think we need to type in sim, not GUI. Let's go ahead and try that. GC sim. Either. Okay. We might have to source it again. Let's go ahead and try clearing this. Let's close it, reopen the terminal. Yep, we needed to close and reopen the terminal. So now that we typed in the command, it'll actually open it up. All right. Sorry about that, but as you can see, looking through the information documentation is very important, just to make sure that, you know, if anything changes, you have the most up-to-date version. So often enough, you'll find yourself looking through documentation. All right, let's test it one more time. And as you can see, it starts. All right, well, thank you very much. This is how to install ROS2 with some of its dependencies, Rviz, and Gazebo.